Hello, good evening, and welcome to the War Room. And I have to set myself up in the right room for once. So, this is the War Room. This is day 18 of Russia's incursion into the Ukraine. And things are getting a bit weird. People are getting kidnapped. Russia's doing Russians things. They're bringing in a fifth country's belligerents. Apparently, Iran is attacking now. So, what you're essentially looking at is a world war. I mean, how else are you going to describe it? You've got the Russians pushing west. You've got the Chinese eyeballing the east. And you've got Iran doing Iran things with cruise missiles, attacking, was it Air Force bases or embassies or something like that? I'm sorry, I didn't grab the details of that one too deep because my focus is what's going on in Ukraine specifically. It was brought to my attention yesterday as it happened. Mikhail Neitstritsky and Scott, they both mentioned it, and I figured they would be here to sort of elaborate on it, but I'm going to chalk up tonight to a bit of daylight savings time screwing with people, and probably because I scared them both saying that I was going to make them start presenting stories to give the show more balance. So it's hard to say. Their excuse is it's your show. It's like, yeah, well, you're a panelist. You should contribute equally too. Otherwise, why do I have you here? But I just thought it'd be nice to have extra voices and extra people putting in their 2 cents and their opinions and their stories that maybe I missed. Anyway, it's Sunday. If you live in the United States, in 3 of the 4 time zones in the continental U.S., you've been messed with daylight savings time. After yesterday's show, I went on and started playing State of Decay 2 for a bit, and the next thing I know, my clock says it was 4 o'clock in the morning, and I thought, oh, I better go to sleep. And I forgot that the daylight savings time swallowed up an hour, so I actually would have went to bed what should have been 3 o'clock, which is still really late for me because I didn't do stuff like that since I was in college, and that was a long time ago. So anyway, good evening to all of you in the audience, but it looks like I'll be flying this one solo today, and for the sake of continuity, I didn't do it as a pre-record because honestly I didn't know that nobody was coming. But like I said, it's Sunday evening, and I think actually one of them's at work. The other one, no idea. Mike is actually down with the sickness, so he's got like Rona in the sinuses or something today, which I can relate. I mean, the older I get, the worse it gets for me too. So anyway, for the sake of expediency, I guess is good. I'll be flying tonight solo. I'll be your captain tonight, and we're just gonna get through the stories really quickly because it's the weekend. You guys have things to do too, and the stories on the weekends I've noticed through most of my sources, they're fewer and further apart, and they put a lot of human interest and opinion stories on the weekends. And it's, for me, I have to weed those out because it's not really effective to the timeline. It's people interjecting opinion and what's the word I'm looking for? Conjecture into the timeline, and it's like I can't really use that as news of the day type things. Some of them were pretty close. Like the one I ended the show with yesterday, that was definitely a human story because that video was pretty touching. And Russia responded in kind, quite brutally today, as a matter of fact. It was a U.S. embassy. Okay, good. I'm glad somebody was able to clear that up, so I appreciate that. it I guess the best way to describe what's going on right now is we are geopolitically uh, weak, very, very weak. We're the guy that just walked into prison, and it's our first day, and we went straight into the shower, terrified for our lives, and all the world is walking around with soaps on a rope with a hole in the middle of it. That's at least what they think we are. See, the thing is world leaders always look at the world leaders. They don't realize the weight and the fight in the countrymen of that world leader. And right now, our world leader is frankly pathetic. And so what you're seeing is opportunist attacks. Now, unless someone can link Russia to a phone call to Iran to collaborate the timing of this, it just really comes off to me like an attack of opportunity. You know, attack America while it looks weak because it's not doing anything about Ukraine. And China's sort of in a holding pattern, and Iran is like, this is the time. Now we strike. So I don't think there were any deaths recorded to that embassy attack, but it's still an attack, right? That is Article 5, isn't it? In a nutshell. So has our commander in chief actually, put on his big boy pants and address this yet? Because I didn't see anything. I'm gonna check right now, just in case, if there was an update. But for some reason, I don't think there was. Yeah, there's nothing there. Still. And that's frankly shocking to me. But it is what it is, right? Anyway, we're all here. The casualty statistics have been updated yet again, so my source is good about doing them daily, so I did make the changes. Uh, I guess the only way to really verify that for you guys is if you play every day for a couple of minutes, and you'll see the numbers have been changing. Um, but let's go ahead and get started because I don't have a lot of opinion tied to this one. I will explain the background picture today, however. Scott pointed this out to me, I think, or no, I think my Night Strike and Scott pointed this out to me about 2 or 3 days ago. That is actually taken on campaign, and it's not just that one. I think that's a tank. It might be a BMP. They always say that, Terry. That's the problem. See, we always give them the benefit of the doubt, and then they turn around and they're like, "Oops, sorry, our bad." It's like that drone that just mysteriously crashed in Croatia, yesterday. It was like, "Oh, that wasn't our target either." It's like, no, the Russians don't take a dump without a plan, right? That's Tommy Thompson's quote from The Hunt for Red October. Things happen for a reason, and either we do them to instigate something or they do it to provoke us to do something. Everything is happening for a reason. And I think the world is just sitting there waiting for us to do something about it. And then once we do, then what? Right? We've got, I think it's about 20,000 troops across Europe right now on campaign in, was it Germany and Poland? We've got Patriot batteries in Poland now. Um, there are people on station. It's not enough if we enter this. But if we do enter this, that buildup will be incredibly quick. Oh, okay. They didn't hit the embassy, but it came close to it. Okay. Well, regardless, I mean, it hits something, and the world is going, what the fuck, Iran? What's the deal? And are they going to just use the excuse of the negotiations for the Iran deal in Switzerland? Saying, well, we don't agree to any of this, so we're attacking? It's still not acceptable, right? The fact of the matter is Iran is working feverishly to get a nuclear weapon. Every nuclear deal with Iran is bullshit. Every single one of them. Every time they make a deal for having IAEA inspectors, the Iranians negotiate a deal where it's like, nope, you're not going to any of those. You can go to this one, and that one is fake. There's nothing in it. So they don't show anything. But there's probably, for every one place the inspectors go, they've probably got 19 others that are working feverishly to create the bomb. So, and who's to say they don't have it already and they've just been lying the whole time? Because if Russia sees Iran as a potential ally on a southern flank, then they'll just give them what they want, right? Because that gives them an ally that they can use as a proxy. Same thing with China, right? Same thing with North Korea. I mean, if you think about it, it's this whole thing is in Asia and it's branching out in every direction. It's like spilling a bottle of ink on a piece of white paper, and it's just bleeding over from the edges, or to the edges. The edges being Western civilization. So anyway, yeah, these troops are putting in actual Soviet flags on their tanks and their BMPs because those are obviously the diehards. You know, I don't think your conscripts are doing that. They're still kind of going, what the hell are we doing in here? You told us we were doing a training exercise, and then all of a sudden, you know, our commanders are screaming at us to go in country. But I mean, it's been 18 days now. I think the reality of the situation set in. They're going to be the most hated military in the world, bar none. So let's go ahead and get started. That photo does disturb me quite a bit, but I've got a parody comic that's going to make fun of that quite a bit too. So for your entertaining pleasure, you'll get to see that here in a little while. My first story today, it comes out of Ukraine at noon. So it was like 4 o'clock my time, but it was already noon in Ukraine, 12:01. And what was kind of strange to me was usually I get 6, 7 stories before noon. You know, all the morning shenanigans gets listed and updated. Some of it post facto, but first story I got for you today was 12:01. I thought that was really strange. But it was an update, surprisingly enough, from the UK Defense Ministry, not from Ukraine. So, the intelligence update says that Russian forces are paying a high price due to their stiff Ukrainian resistance, essentially. It says Russian forces are attempting to envelop Ukrainian forces in the east of the country as they advance from the direction of Kharkiv in the north and Mariupol in the south. Russian forces advancing from Crimea are attempting to circumvent Milokayev. Sorry, I can't see it too well right now. Mykolaiv. There it is. My Russian's rusty. As they look to drive west towards Odessa, Russia is paying a high price for such advance, or for each advance as the Ukrainian armed forces continues to offer staunch resistance across the country. I'm reading the English part of it now. I gave up trying to read Cyrillic in tiny font. So, surprisingly enough, the Sunday update came from the UK before it came from anywhere else, and I thought that was a little strange. But what I suspect is they had this information ready to go the night before, and they popped it in here for their first story on Sunday. So, about an hour later, there's a report that a centuries-old Orthodox Christian monastery in eastern Ukraine was damaged in an airstrike. This happened late Saturday night. So yesterday there was a mosque that was attacked. There's about 80 refugees and about 33 or 34 children, something like that, inside. Well, this one was much larger. So this is an Orthodox Christian monastery, and it was attacked in, Russian airstrikes at night. That's been their MO since day one. And they're very selective with their targets, clearly, because they want to inflict maximum psychological damage. So anyway, this monastery had more than 500 refugees, including 200 children. So this was obviously one of the stops on the refugee path out of the country towards Poland or Moldova, or even maybe Belarus, if anyone was crazy enough to go there. So they were using the monastery as a shelter, and Ukraine's parliament said that at least several people were hurt as a result of the airstrikes, but no fatalities were reported. The refugees and monks had moved to the basement on Saturday, and the Holy Dormition. Sorry, I don't know much about Orthodox Christianity. It says the Holy Dormition, uh, Sviatogorsk Lavra. No, I'm sorry. I've never had to say that name before. It's located in the Donetsk region of the country. It is at least 495 years old, with the earliest documentation of its existence dating to 1526. So, Russian cancel culture is permanent. When they want to cancel something, they destroy it. Whereas cancel culture from the West is electronic and nonsense. They might shut you down for a few days or a few weeks, or business might go out of business or whatnot. But Russians destroy things to dust. They bomb things. So it's much worse. And they're obviously trying to cancel Ukrainian history. Moving right along, about another hour later, so it's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon already over there. And the airstrike on a Ukrainian airbase from yesterday occurred. Oh, sorry. No, this was today. My mistake. An airstrike on a Ukrainian airbase Sunday occurred just 13 miles from the Polish border, marking the closest the conflict has ever come to a NATO ally so far. Lviv Mayor Andriy Sadavi urged NATO allies to help stop the war, saying, "Do you understand that war is closer than you imagine? Russia's already at the border. You have fighters that can protect our skies, and when I say ours, I mean not only Ukraine, but very soon this war may lose the prefix Russia-Ukraine." The Russian strike occurred just before 6 a.m. local time, killing at least 9 people and injuring 57. The base is located within Lviv Oblast, some 30 miles from downtown Lviv. So, if you're a Pole at the border and you're seeing this attack, which is 13 miles away from your border, if you don't have the high ground, you're not seeing it. But if you're getting the reports in, do you chomp at the bit hoping one of those missiles stray off and lands within your borders? It doesn't have to hit anything important, it just has to hit something within your borders, right? I don't know. These guys are... Squib said it pretty well the other day. The Poles are itching for a fight, and they will crush Russia's military. I think they've had nothing but time and practice and animosity stewing for 2.5 generations. And they're just, you know, they're probably sitting at the border just going, fuck around and find out. Because at this point, they're ready. If you look at their arsenal, they have almost every NATO tank in inventory. They've got Leopard 2A1s. They've got Centurions, British Centurions, I think it is. It's either Centurion or Conqueror. I forgot what the current one is. I think it's a Centurion. They've got those. They've got Abrams. They have T-72s, T-90s, and T-92s. Basically, they have every tank for every belligerent nation that they may have to face or be allied to, which gives them a very unique advantage. They know the weak points of every one of those tanks because they own them. Same goes for their Air Force. They have a unique advantage, at least when it comes to the ground attack. But I guess we won't know until a Russian missile veers off. Or maybe they just become so emboldened by their gains that they just go straight into Poland early, and that'll be their folly. We, the panel, usually talk for a couple of hours after the show, and I had drawn a map for Jaime, Zorro, And he always asks me because he's a real astute citizen of his or student of history. So he asked me, he says, "What do you think's going to happen if Ukraine falls to Russia? Where do you think they'll go next?" So what I had done was I loaded up the battle map and I basically drew my theory out in front of him, where I outlined Ukraine in red because Russia was in red on that map already, and then I filled it in, and then I said, well, I think Moldova would be taken over with a phone call. That's one of the poorest nations in the region. Um, the Russians came in and said, "We're dropping 9,000 troops on your border for our offensive. Deal with it." And Moldova was just like, "Look, whatever. We can't afford to fight you. Just don't knock anything over, okay? That's all we got. Just take it and go," kind of a thing. So I think they would just cush with a phone call because they just don't want their fledgling country to fall into ruin. Um, or floundering country, economically speaking. Sorry. So after Moldova would fall, then I think they would turn their eye of Sauron towards the Latvian or the Baltic states, even though they are NATO allies. Because I think at that point, Putin will become so maddened and emboldened by his gains that he will think he can take on NATO. So Latvia, Estonia, basically all the Baltic states. I colored those in. And then at the same time, I think they would probably push south into Georgia because that country's kind of 50-50, separatist and patriot, I guess you can call it. But yeah, like half their government says that there should be more sanctions on Russia, and the other half are like, "We love you, Russia. Oh God, be deep inside of us," kind of a thing. So let's just say that gets taken over. Anyway, by the time we were all done, I had left Poland alone because there was this one little region that was controlled by the Russians that sort of split the country like 80-20 on the north corner. And I thought, well, they'd probably just give up that little corner if they had to. Either way, they left Poland alone till last. You know, they established everything north and south of it. And then he says, what about, or what after that? So that's where the theory really kicked in. And I started to highlight Turkey. And I colored it in red. And he says, why Turkey? And I said, well, think about it. The whole reason for this war was so they had a warm water port for the Black Sea. And if they take over Turkey, then they get the entry port into the Black Sea. The one that's protected by the, I forgot the name of it now, but there was an act that was passed where Turkey gets to control entry into the Black Sea from military vessels. So if they took over Turkey, now they can have a warm water port in the Med because they would have the western coast of Turkey. And if history is a good teacher, that means Cyprus would go down pretty quickly. And then Greece would be the next thing that I would probably think they would turn their eye towards because Greece is kind of poor too. How much of a fight could they put up? Anyway, by the time I was done, there was a lot of red on the map. And he looked at it and he goes, I don't understand. And I wrote the words 1961 at the top of the map. And he goes, oh. And he goes, well, what about, he says, so how do you think, he goes, do you think the Greece thing would be real? And I said, not really. I think he would stop at Turkey. Because if he took all that, you would have the Cold War map of the 1960s. And I think he would be satisfied with that. Or die of old age by then, or whatever. But I don't know. It was all, tinfoil hat theory. But he asked, so like I entertained him and I drew it all out. I thought it was kind of fun. I mean, war's not fun, but I mean, you get my point. The theory and the guessing. So anyway, let's move on. So most of my stories kept coming in by the hour. Now we're at 3 o'clock Ukrainian time, and they had a update for the death toll on the airbase. So it came about an hour after, and it was confirmed 35 dead, 134 wounded. This was the one in the Lviv Oblast, so it's the one that's 13 miles from the Polish border. Original figures were 9 people, uh, 9 people dead, 57 injured. About an hour later, they updated the totals, and it was 35 killed, 134 wounded, which is, I'd say that's a pretty effective attack, considering it's a small base, and they really don't have much to spare, do they? So like proportionally, it was probably pretty devastating. And it's not the only air base they're attacking either. They attack like 2 or 3 of them in the west because they're trying to prevent um, supply flights from coming in from the west, and they're probably trying to prevent the airfields from being used for the potential for the Polish MiG deal still. I don't think that's 100% off the table. Our involvement to broker the deal might be off the table, but the Poles are pretty clever and crafty, so they'll probably figure out something. Ah, good evening to you, Mad Sexy. So, um, just to update you, I'm flying solo tonight. Everyone's either sick or screwed up with daylight savings, or they're just scared because I was going to make them present stories. Alright, so, moving right along. This happened around the exact same time as this current story, but the time of the story is 8:04 p.m. in Manila, the Philippines. And I thought this was a bit odd. But Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte is ready to make the country's facilities available to American forces should NATO end up embroiled in Russia's war in Ukraine. Ambassador Jose Manuel Romualdez said that the president declared his intention during a recent meeting in Manila. Duterte has fostered closer ties to Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese leader Xi Jinping, but he condemned the invasion of Ukraine and voted in support of a UN resolution to demand Russia's immediate withdrawal. He says if they're asking for the support of the Philippines, it's very clear that, of course, if push comes to shove, the Philippines will be ready to be part of the effort, especially if this Ukrainian crisis spills over into the Asian region. This was Romualdez commenting on in an online briefing with Manila-based local journalists. Give them the assurance that if ever needed, the Philippines is ready to offer whatever facilities and whatever things that the United States will need, being a major, well, our #1 ally. So all of a sudden they've done an about face. You know, like our relations with the Philippines have not been the best lately. And now all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, buddy, that communism's coming across like a real itchy blanket, and we know we were talking a lot of shit about you the last couple of years, but oh God, please save us. Just put your shit in our country so we don't get overrun." That's pretty much what it is. This whole story read to me like one giant cover your ass session, because I think they're scared shitless of China. I don't even think that's a theory. I think that's an absolute. I think they're scared shitless. All of a sudden, this guy was puffing up his chest against the West, and now all of a sudden it's like Russia and China are becoming quite major players in the region, and he doesn't want to lose his good thing. I could be wrong, but it's just one man's opinion. What I've seen for the last couple of years, he's been at odds with our leadership for a while. Not just the current one, but he's been getting kind of emboldened and more brash, and all of a sudden he's like, "Hey, buddy, yeah, you remember our old ancient history where you came and saved it? Could you maybe think about coming over here? You can come by. It's cool. It's cool. I'll roll out the red carpet for you." Anyway, we'll see. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. All right, so again, about an hour later, so now it's okay. Before I go into the story, I'll address the chat. So, Mad Sexy is like, all these years I thought China was on our side after all these years in business and aid in World War II. No. Nothing could be further from the truth. See, you're thinking of like the era of the Flying Tigers. This is all before communism took over in China. Once communism took over in China, it was everything else was over. Instead, it was a case of Chairman Mao wanting to wave his sword and get his back from his country being devastated by the Japanese. And he didn't want any part of us. He wanted us out. And what you're looking at now is the Chinese play the long game. They never do instant gratification. They always plan ahead. Just if you look at how tight the Chinese family unit is, like for instance the guy I work for, the family unit, even for those who come to America, is still incredibly tight. Uh, it's not unusual to see 3 generations of a family living in one house together because there's a role that each one plays, right? But this whole situation is they played the long game since the 1970s ish, something like that, 70s, 80s, where they decided that they were going to become the world's manufacturer of cheap labor. They built something for everybody, and they just kept stockpiling their money and their influence, and the most importantly, their trade deficits with these countries. Oh, don't worry, yeah, we're giving you $500 billion worth of stuff, and we're only buying back a billion. It's fine, don't worry about it. And then the bill is slowly becoming due, and it's giving them quite a presence, actually, diplomatically speaking. I mean, look what they did with our astronaut in the ISS. That's pretty frightening. They're actually intending on leaving him stranded up there in 3 weeks and disconnecting their part of the ISS. No, that was the Russians. Never mind, my mistake. Take that back. Um, no, they're rich beyond your wildest dreams, but it's only a token few, and it's the ones that are the authority in the country. There is a middle class on paper, but everything that the middle class is earning can be taken away from them in a blink of an eye by the government. Like, don't kid yourselves. Yeah, they were never on our side, so to speak. The only thing that they're on is their own side. And if it aligns with getting an ally in on continent with Russia, then they'll use them, which you'll see here towards the end of the show. If you didn't know, there's an American astronaut on the International Space Station who's been up there for I think 355 days. He's about due to come home within about 3 weeks. His ride home was a Russian rocket. And given all the sanctions that we've levied against Russia and all the military gear we've been giving Ukraine to kill Russians, the astronauts of the International Space Station were told to separate themselves from the American because they may or may not take him home. Which is really tragic because most of the people on the International Space Station, they're scientists, right? They don't care about geopolitics, they care about science. And they've probably become quite fond of one another, internationally speaking, because they work together. And they're being used as political pawns for, I don't know, a cheap victory, I guess. A cheap moral victory for Russia or something like that. But yeah, they've been instructed to disconnect the Russian part of the ISS from the American part. They scraped off all the flags on the sides of it, and supposedly they're going to go home in 3 weeks. They're going to leave that guy up there high and dry. Now, it's not the end of the world because Elon Musk, I think, has the capability of docking with the ISS because I think he does cargo runs to the ISS for them. So it's just a matter of, has Elon Musk already started putting together a rocket with a small crew with the docking collar instead of using it as a cargo run? And he would just go up there and dock with it, grab the astronaut, bring him back home. Makes him look like a hero, a national hero, right? He'll probably win like the Congressional Medal of Freedom for doing it. So yeah, SpaceX has the capability. And truth be told, if the Russians want to do Russian things, fuck them. Like, let Elon Musk become Time Magazine's Man of the Year, or at least runner up to Vladimir Zelensky. Let him be the recipient of the Congressional Medal of Freedom, like Rush Limbaugh got, but let Joe Biden give him one for bringing back an astronaut and not having to worry his family or NASA or the world, so to speak. Anyway, let's move on. So now we are at, let's see, it's another hour. And it's 8:06 p.m. or a.m. my time. I think I was just getting up. And it's 4 o'clock, an hour to curfew in Ukraine. And this popped up. Russian forces took a second Ukrainian mayor captive. Ukrainian officials said Sunday Russian war criminals abducted Yevhen, which I think is just Stephen, right? Yevhen Matveyev, mayor of Dniporudne, a city in the man, they're really packing them on today. Vaslivka Rayon of Zaporozhye Oblast, according to the Ukrainian Minister of Foreign Affairs Dmytro Kuleba. Getting zero local support, invaders turn to terror, Kulebas tweeted. I call on all states and international organizations to stop Russian terror against Ukraine and democracy. Right. So I had a theory before that what they were doing was they were accumulating these guys who were local leaders, figures, people that the refugees and the people of these cities that are fleeing would be able to easily recognize and identify. And I thought, okay, they're holding them hostage, but if things still keep going sideways for the Russian military, I wouldn't put it past Putin to say, make a spectacle out of them and execute them in public in front of the people of the city. To break them. Because, yes, some will dig in their heels and they'll be very angry and they'll fight harder. But a lot of them will be devastated just at the pageantry and theater of a public execution. You know, they'll see that and go, God, that was the mayor. It could be me next. Far worse. Maybe they'll put me on a train and send me off to Siberia. You know, something like that, right? So it's pretty scary. I mean, he's got 2 mayors of 2 cities in the country now. Hostage. Now, I think the first people were taken by Spetsnaz. I don't know who took the second one. Like, I didn't get any unit information or anything like that. But it is pretty disturbing. I wasn't going to make a mockery of the show, like how I do it. But I was tempted to change the opening theme music to The World at War. And if you've ever heard that, or if you've ever seen that TV series, it came out, I want to say it came out in the middle to late 80s. And it was brilliant. Like, I remember when I was a kid, I think it was like Time Magazine or something, they sold it as a multi VHS at the time, multi VHS volumetric series. You know, it was like getting National Geographics almost. I remember seeing the commercials. But fantastic show. Like if you've never seen it, I think it was called The World at War, and then the second one was called War and Remembrance. There was a sequel. And the first one led up to, well, basically it's a story of multiple families, but the main character is a Polish Jewish psych like professor, and he's incredibly educated and very influential. The Nazis actually liked him, but one of his students became SS, and he was tasked with capturing him and then putting him in a camp. And throughout the series, his daughter or his niece tries to get him out of the country, and he keeps saying, "Oh no, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. These people love me, yada yada." He just kept drinking the Kool-Aid, right? And it made her life harder and harder and harder because she was married to a naval officer in the U.S. Navy, a submariner. Anyway, fast forward. What ends up happening is they get captured, obviously, and he gets put into this token position of leadership in a town in Czechoslovakia that's supposed to be like a giant PR stunt. So they let like the League of Nations or something come inspect it, and it's supposed to look all hunky dory and everything's all in the up and up. And they parade this guy around as one of the leaders, and look how great this is. The Nazis are so generous, all that shit, right? And then once the inspectors were out, they sent them all off on trains to Auschwitz and Birkenau and name your concentration camp. Sure as shit, he ends up in one, and his death is horrible. And his daughter or his niece, she barely survives it. Like, I don't. It's fantastic. Anyway, why did I bring that up? Oh yeah, because I was going to use the theme song from it for the show, but I thought that would be too much of a mockery, so I didn't do it. But I would highly recommend it if you've never seen those two series, World at War and War in Remembrance. They're just epic for something that was made that long ago, and it was originally made for like TV or VHS or something like that. Like it never went to the theater. Uh, the budget was incredible. Like the quality was fantastic. Like they don't do series like that anymore. Not really. Anyway, sorry, long tangent. All right, so moving right along. Okay, so about another hour passed. It is curfew time. 10 minutes in, 5 p.m., 5:10 p.m. Ukrainian local time. And I think there was an update to the monastery bombing. So here's what it looks like. There was a couple of pictures, but this one actually shows visible damage, like convincing visible damage. So this is like the update on that original story that an Orthodox Christian monastery in Ukraine, sheltering hundreds of refugees, including children, was reportedly hit by an airstrike on Saturday night. Window frames blew out as a result of the terrible force of the explosion in the Lavra's temples. Um, an explosive wave smashed all the windows and doors in the Lavra hotels. The Rada, Ukraine's parliament, said about 500 refugees, including 200 children, were taking shelter in the Holy Dormition, Svyatogorsk. Svyatogorsk. Sorry, I've never had to pronounce that word before, so it's kind of ancient or weird to me. Svyatogorsk Lavra, located in the Donetsk region. The airstrike happened around 10 p.m. local time. Donetsk Governor Pavlo Kirilenko said that nearly 1,000 people were in the monastery Saturday when it was hit by Russian planes and artillery. As a result, one person was hospitalized, two went to the emergency room in Slovyansk on their own. Another 30 people who received minor injuries were treated on the spot. Kirilenko posted on Telegram, according to an English translation. Refugees and monks were evacuated to the monastery's basement. So that was reported by Ukraine's parliament. Kirilenko said that the Children's Regional Health Center, known as the Pearl of Donetsk, was also damaged. The monastery is historic, and it dates back to as far as 1526. Hashtag Russian cancel culture. I put that last bit in, sorry. Anyway, you can't tell me, oh yeah, no, we're not targeting those. What are you talking about? You crazy. No, they hit that on purpose. And I find it kind of weird. Like, the theory of a bomb shelter is just weird to me. You're on the surface, you're in a building, you're getting attacked. Go to the bomb shelter. You go underground. If the bombs are good enough, it's now your tomb. Obviously, if the bombs aren't good enough, the shelter works. I don't know. There's There's a juxtaposition there. It can either save you or it'll entomb you. So Mad Sexy says, I heard that they've been using a type of vacuum bomb on Ukraine. That is correct. They are using thermobaric weapons. Um, on day 3 or 4, the stories began, and Russia vehemently denied it. But then photos of the TOS-21, which I think is the launching system, the vehicle that launches them, uh, pictures of those started flooding in, and videos of them started flooding in. So then it became undeniable. It's like, those only shoot those. So it's like, uh, no, we didn't. No, we filled those with smoke canisters. Like, sure, buddy. Okay, yeah, no. There's tear gas in the. Uh huh. No, they are using them. And NATO stands by and does nothing about it. So, whatever. Because, it's a localized conflict. It's like, no, we can't get involved in that, even though they're using weapons that are against the Hague Convention and the Geneva Convention. Let me tell you something about the Hague and the Geneva Convention. Every belligerent nation that was on the wrong side of a war never fucking abides by either one of those. They don't care. Because when you fight in a war, you fight to win, and you don't care how you do it, you just win. If you lose, then all those convention things just become war crimes on your record, and then you're executed for them. But if you win, then none of those things mattered. Well, I think I just put the cart ahead of the horse, because like Mad Sexy was asking like the hypothetical questions of such, but I think what I just sort of detailed is kind of the answer. It's a war crime if you lose. It's just an unfortunate piece of history if you win. And it's an unfortunate piece of history for the victim, because the victor doesn't care. They won. And the victor usually writes history, so it wouldn't even show up anyway. Let's move on, because now I'm going to tell you about a American journalist that was killed in theater. So here he is. This was also around the same time as the Monastery bombing update, so about 10 after 5. Ukrainian National Police said Sunday that an American journalist was killed and at least 2 others were wounded when they came under fire by Russian forces near the capital city of Kyiv. The main directorate of the National Police in the Kyiv region tweeted photos Sunday purportedly showing a bloodied journalist. Sorry if you heard that. My lunch came up. A bloodied journalist, his U.S. passport, and his press badge enclosed in a U.S. peacekeeper holder. Both documents bore identification photos and the name Brent Renaud. Renaud, if you're curious. The press badge was labeled New York Times and listed names of a senior and executive producers for Renaud, and the address of the New York City office for the Gray Lady. In a video message shared to Facebook, Ukrainian police officer Alexander Bugay said from the scene of the shooting that in addition to 51-year-old Brent being killed, 2 other correspondents were injured. He said the wounded were rescued from the scene and taken to the Capitol Hospital. Their conditions are still yet unknown. A second graphic photo showed what appeared to be a bloodied head wound. So, yeah, he got shot in the head. Now, I would have showed you those pictures, but it would probably get me taken off of YouTube, so just remember him as he looks here, not what you're probably going to find if you look for his demise photos, because they're out there. I've seen them. Moving right along. No, still no Article 5. Still no outrage. Still no response. Because it's part of the job, isn't it? If you're going to take the risk of being a war correspondent, and you wear the helmet and you wear the body armor, and you're not carrying a gun, you're still a target, right? Especially if you're wearing that bright blue helmet. Like, they probably look for that. Because if you silence the media, you control the narrative, right? Yeah. Where have we learned that lesson? About another hour later, it is now 6:12 Ukraine time. And let me see, do I have a photo? No. This is a pretty long story, though. Senior U.S. military officials pushed for additional special operations personnel to be sent to Ukraine in the lead up to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, but the request was denied amid White House fears that it would, quote, provoke Russia. As Russia stationed about 100,000 troops on its border with Ukraine last year, U.S. military officials told lawmakers in December that a few hundred additional special operations personnel should be sent to the country to assist in military advice and training. The personnel would have trained Ukrainians on guerrilla tactics and unconventional warfare methods, hit and run, building to building, all that stuff. The personnel would have trained you. Oh, I already said that part. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, yeah, you know who that is. You've seen him on TV. Even planned to bring the matter directly to President Biden for approval. Remember, this was in December, before Putin had only 2/3 of his troops around the country. White House officials, however, were reportedly concerned that the deployment of additional personnel would hamper diplomacy efforts and escalate the situation. The plans were stopped in response to those fears, according to the congressional official familiar with the briefing delivered by a Pentagon official to the Senate Armed Services Committee. Everything we do is participation. Everything we do is escalatory. If we didn't want in, we shouldn't have sent a single piece of equipment. And we shouldn't have commented at all. We shouldn't have said anything. You see, when the media wants to block out things like, I don't know, the last president's accomplishments, they can flip that shit right off, can't they? When's the last time you heard about the Durham report and the investigation against Hillary Clinton? You don't. When's the last time anyone asked the question, what happened to Dr. Anthony Fauci? You don't hear that anymore, do you? If they want you to not hear something or see something, they can do that, right? So, if we didn't want to be involved, and say like 95% of the media in this country is controlled by the left, they could have simply just told other stories. Or played, I don't know, cat videos. Or they could have just played reruns of The View and let those fat old cows moo away at you for millions in sponsorship money. I can't believe people still watch that shit. Anyway, we're in this whether detractors want to admit it or not. What you're seeing right now is what I would like to call half-assed isolationism. You don't want to be an isolationist because you want to keep your face in front of a camera. That's what most of the liberals are doing right now, right? They want to look fake macho. They want to look tough. They want to act like they're going to war. And then when it actually comes time to start putting boots to ass or boots on the ground in theater, no, that would be escalatory. We can't do that. What about all the javelins you sent? Oh, that's not that. There's different degrees of escalation. You can't send jets. Why not? Because that's a different level of escalation. Let me tell you something. The pilot that got killed in a burning wreck didn't wonder if it came from a SAM or a Sidewinder or a MiG. He didn't care. He's dead. You see, there's a saying, the dead don't care. Because their war's over, right? The dead just don't care. So, to say there's different degrees of escalation is almost foolish, because I understand why they say that, but the fact of the matter is there's only one side in this conflict that's been escalating since day one, and they're still continuing to do so. And all they're doing is they're hamstringing and they're neutering the world by preemptively saying, if you respond, that's escalation. We have nukes. once upon a time, Emmanuel Macron from Florida, from France, he responded to that. He called his bluff. He said, "We got nukes too, fucker." And I guess the whole world said, "Shut the fuck up, dude. You're escalating." So, like, he doesn't talk that much anymore. Funny how that works. Mad Sexy is asking me, do I think nukes will fly? Hmm. Do I think they will? Not in the classic sense. No. I don't think Russia's stupid enough to use an ICBM. I don't. Not for this one scrap of land called Ukraine. No way. Now, if he wanted all of Europe, different story. But once upon a time, tactical nuke was something you heard playing Call of Duty, and you didn't think much about it. You found a hacker who got 25 headshots in a team deathmatch. He got a tactical nuke. You heard the sirens. The whole match ended because it was a nuke that was small scale that took out that battlefield. That's apparently a thing in real life now. There's small scale tactical nukes. I have to admit, I was completely unaware. Like, I don't know if they're man portable though, like Starship Troopers or some bullshit. But there are smaller scale nuclear weapons, which makes sense. They don't all have to be Fat Man or Little Boy or name anything much, much worse. They can be smaller. You can scale it down, I suppose. And if that's the case, I wouldn't put it past him. That's all I can say. I don't think he would be dumb enough to do it, but I wouldn't put it past him. I think he'll go chemical and biological first. I don't know. Like, I don't know the answer to that. I'm not in that man's head. I mean, I I did a doctoral thesis called Understanding Soviet Psychology, and I used a book that was titled almost the same as reference material. But to be fair, that book was written in the 1970s. So it didn't have a guy like Putin involved yet. But I don't know, man. I wouldn't put anything past him. This is a guy who can't lose. I guess that's a good way to put it. He's so fully invested in this now that he can't lose. He started arresting his own FSB agents yesterday to prepare scapegoats in case he does lose. Or at least that's my interpretation of it. Who's to say? Let's move on. We're almost done actually, so I'll be able to turn you guys loose soon. So now it's 10:15. It's nice and dark in Ukraine. And it says after Congress passed a spending bill this week that will send 13.6 billion to aid in Ukraine, the bipartisan House Problem Solvers Caucus called for the US and NATO allies to send additional military assistance in the fight against Russia, including Stinger missiles, S-300 surface-to-air missile systems. There's 4 NATO countries that have those, which are Russian-made, and U.S.-made aircraft. Hmm. You mean like F-16s to Poland, kind of U.S.-made aircraft that you balked on? Right. We commend the Polish government for taking proactive steps to deliver MiG-29 jets to the Ukrainian Air Force. We urge assistance to help facilitate this deal. Commit to replenishing our allies' fleets with American-made aircraft, and help advance the transfer of Su-25 aircraft to Ukraine as well. So, Poland has 28 MiG-29s. They also have Sukhoi Su... Is it Sukhoi? Su-25s, which is more like their... I think it's like a fighter bomber type aircraft. I'm not too up on Russian airplanes anymore. I used to be. Anyway, my coworker George can tell you about these until you pass out in boredom. But so now we're thinking about backfilling Poland with F-16s and something else. What's the something else? Fighter bomber type aircraft. We're not giving them F-35s. No way. There's not enough A-10s that we have in inventory that are airworthy enough to make, I think, too big of a difference. And there would still be that lag of having to train them on how to fly it first. So that's probably out. Like, I don't think we're going to give them those, to be honest. Anyway, so the group, which is evenly split between Democrats and Republicans, said all of that stuff. They're working together, which is scary. We also believe that the U.S. should seriously consider strategies to provide further drone capability to the Ukrainians, as they have already used the Bayraktar TB2 drones with success. TB2 drones are their armed drones, and they have been stellar. Like those people are they can. Sorry, I'm just stumbling here. There's a saying that the army gets the weapons, but the Marines make them legendary, right? So like back in the day, the Marines would get the army hand-me-downs or whatnot, and then they would turn that hand-me-down into a legend because they made the best of their situation and their equipment. That is exactly what the Ukrainian military is doing right now. They don't have the Air Force like we do. They have, what, 56 or 57 planes? They were asking for 28 more. We kept saying, you don't need those. You barely lost the ones you've got. And if I was a Ukrainian Air Force commander, I'd be like, are you people fucking stupid? If you give me 28 more MiGs, you've just increased my combat capabilities 33%. Even if I didn't have enough pilots to fly them, I can rotate my planes so they don't wear out as fast. Or I can ground a few that need desperate maintenance and put my pilots in a fresher plane. It's like, how do I see this and our, quote, military experts can't connect the dots? Whatever. Basically, the Ukraine has less aircraft in country than we do on one carrier. Think about that. It's staggering. Anyway, let's move on. I got this photo for you here. And you may notice that that part of the bridge is taking a little bit of a breather. It's a side sleeper, as you can see. That one's like, hang on, bro. It's been a long day. I gotta catch my breath. Let me just lay down for a second. So I called this photo, I captioned it, setting the table for the long haul. Satellite image taken by ImageSat International around 1:30 p.m. on Sunday shows, this is a post facto story, by the way, if you're wondering, shows a destroyed railroad bridge near, was it Voznensk, a town in southern Ukraine that's about 175 miles south of Kyiv. I think the Ukrainians are preparing for the siege of Stalingrad because I am a student of history. I'm fascinated by battle history, right? And I think what you're seeing is the Ukrainians are in what you call a fighting retreat right now. So they know where the enemy's coming and they know where they're headed. So the bulk of your forces are building retreating lines. They're doing as much damage as they can to slow down the advance while tactically retreating to fallback positions. And as they cross these fallback positions, they destroy the crossings to prevent the enemy and stall them further. So this bridge, for instance, if the Russians were able to take over a transport train, they could load it up with the artillery from the east, bring it through here, and get it up to Kyiv where it can do maximum damage trying to peel the layers of the onion that we talked about yesterday. Because that's how the Russians do warfare. It's siege warfare. They surround you, they bombard you, they crush the first layer. Once they know that the first layer is now ineffective and neutered, they can move their artillery up a little ways, take out the next one, and then, keep working your way towards the center. By the time you take out 4 or 5 layers of the onion, your combat engineers have probably figured out how to cross the rivers. Once they cross the rivers with infantry, that's when the real fighting gets nasty. That's when the infantry have to go rubble pile to rubble pile, where you start seeing, enemy at the gates kind of shit. So it's just a matter of time, right? They're bombing out these bridges. There's 3 in Kiev near the Dnieper River, and then there's this major rail bridge crossing towards or south, going north towards Kiev. And what I suspect you're going to see is Russians are going to want to get across that bridge. They're going to be stalled trying to repair it or to build a temporary. And in that time, they're sitting ducks. So the remaining Ukrainian Air Force will probably be just strafing the ever-loving hell out of that, hopefully. But then again, the Russians have superior air numbers. They might be flying top cover the whole time. See? There's that thing we talked about the other day. You can use an airplane as a defensive weapon. It doesn't have to be an offensive weapon, which is the justification that we should send them more jets so they can fly top cover to protect the ones on the ground getting outfitted. But I don't know shit about war, so I've been told. Anyway, let's move on. I suspect you're going to see some seriously nasty fighting at these locations where the bridges are getting taken out. Because that's where they're stalled. They have to try to figure out how to get across. They're sitting ducks. You can just bombard the ever-loving hell out of them with artillery. And just slow them down even worse. And demoralize them. And starve them out. Well, then again, they're getting starved out too because they can't get stuff in because they blew their own bridges. So logistics becomes a big problem. Anyway, let's move on. Next is, well, we blew the bridge. Now the Russians blow up a train. Or attack one. Don't worry, I'll translate this for you. A passenger train... Oh, this was an hour later, by the way. Everything came in hours for some reason. So it's about 11:18 p.m. when I got this post facto story. A passenger train evacuating refugees, and, they're going to tug at your heartstrings, including 100 children, was hit by Russian shelling near the Brusyan station in the separatist-controlled Donetsk region of Ukraine. The country's national railroad wrote there. One conductor was killed and the other was injured during the attack. The railroad was working to evacuate the crew and passengers. This is a terrible blow to those who rescue civilian Ukrainians every day and pave the road of life for more than the 2 million already rescued. That's a pretty nasty hole in the top of that train. That's shrapnel. Either that or, well, maybe that's a through and through. If that's a through and through, that thing was keyholing though, wasn't it? I think it's shrapnel. Anyway. Train bombed. No, they weren't aiming at that. No, we weren't aiming at that. What, you guys are crazy? That's not a military target. And then Putin goes, that was a military target. What a jerk. Alright, next story. 3:20 a.m. Sorry, p.m. 3:20 p.m. my time. 11:20 p.m. Ukrainian time. I called this the story of the day. So this is the one that I'm probably going to put the most emphasis on. And I gave you this. Yeah, I did a little comic for you. If you can't read it, I can blow it up a little bit more for you guys. I can do it like this. Because the timelines in this were important. Here you go. Make this full screen so you can see it better. Is that better? Russia has asked China for military military was the important part. They've asked China for military and economic aid following their invasion of Ukraine. Let me repeat that. Russia has asked China for military and economic aid. If you're on your phone, there's no way you're going to see that. You have to watch it on your screen, full screen. In an attempt to protect intelligence sources, U.S. officials have been reluctant to detail what type of aid is being sought. The request for military assistance, which was first reported by the New York Times, has reportedly raised concern among U.S. officials that China might interfere with any efforts from Western nations to assist Ukrainian forces. We're communicating directly, privately, to Beijing. There is no such thing as private anything to Beijing. That there will absolutely be consequences for large-scale sanctions, evasion efforts, or support to China to backfill them. There's that word, the one that I've been using all week for 2 weeks. Backfill. Now all of a sudden the Chinese are doing it, huh? This came from National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. We will not allow that to go forward and allow there to be a lifeline to Russia from these economic sanctions from any country, anywhere in the world. Sullivan also suggests that China had some idea that Russian President Vladimir Putin was planning something, but conceded the Chinese might not have known the extent of Putin's intentions. Bullshit! Sorry, dust in the room. Chinese leaders have declined to rebuke Putin for his invasion of Ukraine and have come out against Western economic sanctions. China has abstained in multiple United Nations votes to censure Russia. Sullivan is preparing to meet with Chinese foreign policy advisor Yang Jiechi in Rome Monday. Neither the Pentagon nor the White House immediately responded to request for comment. Shocker. Now, think about this. The Russians have the armies, or paramilitary groups, of 4 other nations already, and the Wagner Group. And yet the Ukrainians can't have anything. And now they're asking the Chinese to help, after their ruble became worthless and they can't publicly trade anymore, which means they're desperate because they can't sell their oil because tankers don't want to carry it anymore. They're like, nope, we don't want that smoke. We can't take the risk. Our tankers cost too much to operate, and we can't be stuck in political red tape for a month in dock. So they're just like, you know what? We're not sending our ships there to go collect your oil anymore. That was a huge move, actually. I really admire that. So what's going to end up happening is that the Chinese, ever the opportunist, they're one of the most brilliant business minds in the world, if you think about it. They're the masters of cheap labor. They're also the masters of not giving you a deal. And they're also the masters of paying bottom dollar for anything that they need. They will strong arm you. So you got Russians going, China, hey, broski, I've got this oil tanker. It has like 14 cubic million trillion tons of crude oil. You want to buy? And China looks at it and goes, crude oil is hovering around $130 a barrel worldwide. Russia can't sell it to anybody. We can use it, but we don't have to pay market value because he's got no other buyers. So then Xi Jinping starts to pull, good old-fashioned South Park and go, yeah, I'm in that for about $3.50. And Putin goes, wait a minute. It's $130 a barrel. And he goes, yeah, but I'm only feeling about $3.50. And Russia's going, this is extortion. And Xi Jinping is like, $3.50 is the offer. That's all you getting. Otherwise, you ain't selling. So Russia has to reluctantly sell for Tree Fide. So what they're doing is we have crippled the Russian economy so badly through sanctions and through banking closures that they have to sell all their inventory for next to nothing. And the only buyer that can take it is China, which is kind of dangerous if you think about it, because that means we're making China even stronger, right? But they're buying it for next to nothing. So now Russia has no money, and now they sold all their oil. So now they got no oil, and they didn't get shit for it. Plus, they're exporting coal to China and wheat to China. Multiply everything that Russia produces, say 100 different things, and China's the only place that can buy it, and they're cutting you a check for 1 penny on the dollar for all of it. They're bankrupting him. He's bleeding Russia out, which is going to make Russia lose the war even faster. And then it gets to the point where Russia's like, yo, China, broski, you got all my stuff. I give you deal. Now my country is about to die. You help me? And the Chinese are like, yeah, we'll help you. Kiss the ring. You belong to us now. That is a nightmare scenario. So mad sexy ass, if Russia and China are committing war crimes, why are they allowing them in the Olympics? Okay, so the Winter Olympics location was determined years earlier. So Beijing was chosen probably like anywhere between 8 to 16 years prior, 3 or 4 Olympics prior. They choose these locations way ahead of time because the host countries have to cough up the money in bonds or whatever to build all the facilities to host the Olympics. I don't like the Olympics. I think it's disgusting. Like, the IOC basically whores countries into bankruptcy for the prestige of being the host country. Like, your name is in the book. Congratulations. But like, do you guys remember the Summer Games in Brazil? A couple of Olympics back? You should see what the condition of all those facilities are now. They're derelict. Like, almost all of them are completely in ruin because they bankrupted their country to build them. They even cut down parts of their rainforests and stuff to facilitate the space. Uh, you could argue that they offhandedly killed off tribal people in the process. There were stories about that. And then once the Olympics were over, everyone packed up and left, and all these shiny buildings were left to ruin. Nobody needed them. It's kind of unfortunate. Well, the thing about these atrocities is, yeah, the world talks about you're killing all the Uyghurs in China. You're systematically, you're creating genocide in China. And the whole world might say it, but at the end of the day, they're still signing the dock orders for their Chinese shipment of cheap products because it's just business. I told you, humanity's sick, dude. It's disgusting. At the end of the day, everyone just looks out for themselves, right? Well, every nation does the same thing. Oh, we think it's abhorrent that you would kill all these people like Adolf Hitler killed the Jews. And it's like, oh, so does that mean you're going to boycott the Olympics? No, 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 no. It's fine. We'll still show up. We just won't send our diplomats. That'll be our form of protest. You know what the ultimate symbol of solidarity worldwide would have been? If nobody sent athletes to the Winter Olympics this year. If it was like China hosts the Olympics and all the athletes didn't show up. Only Chinese athletes were there. Nobody showed up. Everyone was like, fuck you, you're killing your own people. We're not supporting this. We want to embarrass you on a global scale. No one's showing up. So it's like, China probably thinks, oh, great, that means we win all the golds by proxy. No, because you're not competing. There's nobody to compete against. That would be one giant FU to the International Olympic Committee, too. Something they deserve. They deserve it. Seriously. Anyway, enough of that diatribe. Sorry. I just think that was a really important story because once upon a time I thought Russia would carry this war and bring China along on its back. And I think I was a complete 180 out. I think China fed the rope to Russia to hang itself. Because at the end of the day, they will strip Russia of all of its resources for pennies on the dollar. Russia's military will be crushed and demoralized. And then China can just say, we're taking Vladivostok back. And we're taking everything north of Mongolia all the way to the Pacific Ocean. And that's the new China. And there's nothing you can do about it. Because you either owe us through trade deficit, or you can't afford to conduct a war against us. And if you even think twice about pushing that little red button, we'll push ours too. See, because China knows how Russia works. They'll de-escalate that situation by escalating that situation. They'll call him out. That or they'll just send someone to kill him. Maybe. I don't know. You would think somebody would have sent somebody in country to kill him already, but I don't know. What do I know? Let's move on. I didn't think we were going to go this long with me just flying solo. All right, so it's 4:20 my time. It is now 12:20 a.m. Ukrainian local time, Monday morning, day 19. So you can tell we're winding down, right? And I found this story kind of interesting, actually. About 80 million Russians who use Instagram were told that their access to the social media platform will be cut off at midnight on Sunday. So they've already been cut off for 6 hours and 22 minutes. Russia's communication regulator, Roskomnadzor. Sorry, I've never had to pronounce that one before either. Informed users Friday that service would be shut down and told them to move their photos and videos off the platform. It comes after Meta, Instagram's parent company, Facebook's also, announced last week that it would temporarily allow, quote, for forms of political expression that would normally violate our rules, like violent speech such as death to the Russian invaders. In response, now, did you hear that part? Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, said, no, it's cool. You Poles and you Ukrainians, if you want to say Russia, go fuck yourself, death to their invaders, we will not stop you for hate speech. But if you question, I don't know, January 6th, here in America, man, you banned into oblivion, right? Anyway, you can say death to the Russian invaders, though. These are the same people who probably allow Iran to say death to America every fucking day. In response, Russian prosecutors asked a court to designate Meta as, quote, an extremist organization. Nick Clegg, the president of global affairs at Meta, said the temporary policy change only applies to the people in Ukraine. I want to be crystal clear. Our policies are focused on protecting people's rights to speech as an expression of self-defense in reaction to a military invasion of their country. Well, happy day. You're going to let them blow off some steam. Russia has already blocked all other social media platforms, including Facebook and Twitter. Extremist organization? I mean, didn't most of us already call them that for selectively shadow banning most of us for the past 5 fucking years on Facebook? Just a thought. Anyway. Let's see. Now, it is 1:21 a.m. Monday, Ukraine time. Here's a photo for you. It's an enhanced satellite photo. You may not recognize what that giant uh, dryer register looking thing is. Ukraine restored a damaged power line to the Chernobyl nuclear power plant on Sunday, 4 days after the line was broken. This was done by the IAEA. Director Rafael Mariano General Grossi. Wait a minute. Is that his name? Rafael Mariano General Grossi? Holy crap. Praised the, quote, positive development, but expressed concern for the 211 technical personnel and guards at the site, which is under the control of Russian forces. Earlier today, I guess that doesn't work. Earlier today, the Ukrainian regulator informed the IAEA that staff at Chernobyl were no longer carrying out repair and maintenance of safety-related equipment, in part due to their physical and psychological fatigue after working non-stop for 3 weeks. Workers haven't rotated since Russia invaded on February 24th, and communication between the power plant staff and officials are still cut off. They're basically being used like slave labor. Now, I made that joke about, or I made the parallel, to Captain America, the First Avenger, where they had all the people building Hydra's weapons, and they were like, I need you to double their work schedules, and they were like, but they will die. They're already working to the death. Never mind, doctor. We can always get more workers. Right? It's the same thing. The Russians are doing that to Chernobyl's nuclear attacks right now. They're going to use them up until they all fall over dead of exhaustion, and then they'll just bring Russian ones over. Just a theory. Anyway, moving right along. Now I've got this picture for you. Here you go. And this was 2:40 a.m. Moscow time. At least 864 people were arrested for protesting the invasion of Ukraine across 37 Russian cities on Sunday. This was according to the human rights group OVD Info. One protester, a 31-year-old pianist, Pianist, keep your mind out of the gutter, Luka Zatravkin, sorry, I'm tired. 31-year-old pianist Luka Zatravkin was arrested in Moscow's Pushkin Square after handcuffing himself to the first McDonald's ever to open in Russia. Why am I talking about McDonald's in the first place, he says? Because this chain of restaurants became the first breath of free air back in 1990. Nearly 15,000 Russians have been arrested in demonstrations since Putin launched the invasion since February 24th. Elsewhere in Europe, tens of thousands of people took to the streets in Warsaw, London, Berlin, Rome, and other cities. In Kherson, the first major Ukrainian city to fall to Russian forces, thousands of residents have begun protesting Russia's occupation. Ukrainian nationals and anti-war protesters also staged demonstrations in Taipei and Taiwan on Sunday. Sorry. I am really tired. So, protests. Doing a lot of good, aren't they? They're just beating you up, hauling you off anyway. I wouldn't chain yourself to a building in Russia, especially if you have Oman and sober guys there, because they'll just club you to death and cut your arm off and leave it on the door as a warning to anyone else stupid enough to chain themselves to it. Remember, they don't give a shit. They can shoot you in the head and walk away and there's no paperwork. In Soviet Russia, police own you. Anyway, There are no civil rights in Russia with the police. None. Zero. And if you make the mistake of going up to an Oman guy saying, hey, look, it says homo backwards, you better be prepared to lose a couple of teeth because they understand exactly what you're saying. So, my last story for you of the day. Congratulations, guys. You made it. It's going to end in a little over an hour and a half today. 3:27 a.m. And look at that guy. Look at the exhaustion on that guy's face. That's a guy who's been leading his country. Others have been very critical of him, but he has been very visible throughout this. Where's ours? Like, our guy hasn't. He's been visibly making excuses for high energy prices. He's been sending his vice president as a proxy to hell. She had nothing useful to say in any of those meetings in Europe last week. Nothing. I mean, she even did her stupid Queen of Tells laugh, and the Romanian president stuck his hand out like, just shut up. Take this seriously. Like, that's the look he had on him. Anyway. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that his side is pushing for a meeting between him and Russian President Vladimir Putin. During ongoing negotiations, representatives of our country's delegation speak in video format every day. Our delegation has a clear task: to do everything to ensure a meeting of the presidents. The meeting that I am sure people are waiting for. Zelensky said this in a video posted to his Facebook page late Sunday evening this year. On Saturday, Zelensky said he would meet with Putin in Jerusalem. Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett visited Moscow to meet with Putin earlier this week and has been trying to mediate the end of the war. Zelensky also reiterated pleas for a no-fly zone over Ukraine after Russian forces targeted a military training facility just 15 miles east of the Polish border, killing 35 people. Last year, I made a clear warning to NATO leaders that if there were no tough preventative sanctions against Russia, it would lead to war. And we were right. So says Zelensky. And now I'm stuck repeating this again. If you do not close our sky, it is only a matter of time before Russian missiles fall on your cities, NATO territory, your territory, on the homes and citizens of NATO countries. He's not wrong. He's not wrong. He really believes it. Now, whether or not Putin will push further and further west is yet to be seen. I'm still going to stick to my theory that he's just trying to take back what he lost. I think he still wants the world map Cold War 1961. But what do I know? Honestly, I don't know. Besides, by the time he does all that, if my theory proves true and his campaign takes all those countries, he'll die of old age. If the average Russian male dies at 72, his campaign to take the Baltic states and Turkey and Georgia and Moldova, that's years. Years and years. Like, he's not going to see it through to the end. See, the problem with Putin is he played the long game without ever knowing the rules. Because he's not very good at it. Where Xi Jinping, on the other hand, he's been playing this game since he lifted the child restriction ban in China almost 20 years ago. 20 years ago? Something like 20 years ago. Close to 20 years ago. Anyway. Yeah. You've got an amateur hour, basically, when it comes to the long game. So this is the section where I would usually ask my other co-host if there's anything that they saw that they wanted to add to it. But they're not here today, so I have to check. So stand by. Let me take a look real quick just to see if there's anything serious. Let's see. 45 minutes ago, the U.S. condemned the Russian attack in western Ukraine. Antony Blinken says it's time to put an end to Russian brutality. Well, words aren't going to stop it. Ukrainian forces reportedly shot down Russian aircraft. 7 aircraft went down and a UAV. That was an hour ago. So I guess the scroller at the bottom will have a couple of more updates for tomorrow. That's fine. Anyway, I think that's all I've got for you today. So what I'll probably do now is play this. Oh, not that one. We'll play this one. I did flip it properly the first time. My bad. Anyway, I want to thank you all for taking the time, your busy day, on Sunday evening, to hang out with me. By myself. Anyway, if you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're a regular here, welcome back. If you got up early this morning, you probably saw that I did do another firearms review. And after this, I'll start editing the one for next Sunday. Anyway, I want to take the time to thank you all for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and tell others that I'm doing it. And I'm going to continue to try to keep doing this until this ends. But I got to tell you, it's really burning the candle at both ends for me. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. This was the War Room. Slava Ukraini.